It is 7 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so with that, we welcome everybody to the August meeting of the Union Township Planning Commission. Roll call, please.
All right. Daring?
Here.
Sorry, let me get that closer. Gross?
Here.
McDonald, I don't see. Squadrito?
Here.
Buckley?
Here.
Shingles is excused. Lapp?
Here.
Older.
Here.
All right, we have quorum.
Okay, thank you. So next item is approval of tonight's agenda. So you have it, it's right in the front of your packet. There are 3 new business items and 1 old business item. Is there anything else that anyone's aware of that needs to be on tonight's agenda, or any corrections or concerns with tonight's agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Okay, so the motion was by Thering, tie, so we'll give the tie to Olver. His auditory reached my ear first. Seconded to approve tonight's agenda as prepared. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so our agenda is approved. Next item is approval of last month's minutes. We met July 16th, and so you have the July 16th minutes also towards the front of your packet. Are there any corrections to the August 16th minutes?
Move to approve. Support. Nicely
Okay.
done, Paul.
Before we acknowledge that motion, I did find one thing. So on page 2, I guess it's page 5 of the packet, but page 2 of the minutes, the motion just above other business, it says Buckley moved and Lapp supported, but in the roll call, there's no Lapp, and I'm assuming that you voted.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'll fix that.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, so we had a motion by Olver with a second by Gross to approve the minutes, and we'll take the motion to be with the one minor editorial change. Further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so minutes are approved. Let's see, next item is correspondence, board reports, and presentations. And just taking them in order, the first one is Commissioner Thering, updates from Board of Trustees.
I have to apologize. I left my notes at home and I did a really nice job to let you know what we've done the last 2 meetings. And I'm not going to remember everything in detail. The one thing that sticks out the most, though, is we did agree to participate with the city in the pathway from where Pickard and Harris, where the credit union is across the street, where it turns into Crawford, where the Citgo on the other side, to do a pathway from there all the way to, I believe it's Mission Creek Park. And we are using ARPA funds for that. I have more notes on that. I'm not going to try to mumble through it because I'm gonna mess something up. So what I'll do is our next meeting next month, you're gonna get double the information if you can handle it.
Okay. Any questions for Commissioner Thering?
Is there a timetable on that pathway?
I believe it's gonna be 2025 if everything goes the way it should.
So, I'm trying to figure out the location. Did
So
you say
if-
coin oil?
I'm sorry?
Did you say coin oil? Is that?
Yeah, like where Coin Oil is on the other
North.
side of, so Crawford, that runs towards the
Right.
north
Right.
on
Around
the
north.
west side of that road.
Okay, all right.
Not on the Coin side, but
Yeah,
on the
right.
opposite side, and a
Right.
nice pathway all the way to Mission Creek, which will be part of the connection to all the parkways, so.
Cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's the one that's stuck out the most.
Yeah.
So there's some other good tidbits and information that I would love to. I wouldn't be able to do it justice. So
Okay. Any, any progress on filling our vacant seat?
not as of yet.
Okay.
It is. We discuss it, but it's not a. We haven't had any formal motions to fill the seat yet. So.
Do we have any applicants?
No.
No applicants. Spread the word. Plenty of opportunity to serve.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Could be, it's been summer and people, I don't know if you get fewer applicants during the summer months or not, but hopefully it'll pick up.
Well, it's a great committee to be on. So.
And I believe I have it posted on our webpage, on the front, to go apply. We have open seats, so hopefully someone looks at our website.
Okay. Anything else for, on Board of Trustees? Okay, we'll move on. Next item is a report from Commissioner Buckley, updates from ZBA.
ZBA did not meet last month and has had their September meeting canceled as well. So
Okay.
That sounds like the committee to be on.
you're welcome to.
So
Hey, you can forget your notes and be all right.
things are currently quiet on the variance front.
Let's keep it that way.
Okay. Next item is more of a report. It's the, or a written report. It's the Community and Economic Development Monthly Report, which again you had in your packet. We normally pause to give commissioners an opportunity to ask any questions they might have had based on anything that they saw in the monthly report.
Is there an update on the rental inspector hire?
We are currently wrapping up, evaluating the applications to decide who we're going to interview. That actually decision will be made tomorrow. We'll be scheduling interviews as soon as possible after that. We did receive 7 applications, so that's some good choices.
Wow.
Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, if not, we'll move on.
Well, before we move on, actually, I do have one other thing to report,
Okay.
if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Over here on the table against the wall, you'll see some boxes. Those are gifts from Consumers Energy. If you would like to have one, these are kind of a bonus of being a planning commissioner this evening, if you would like to have one. They are energy efficiency kits. It's got an interesting collection of stuff in there. There are a couple of power strips that apparently have some economic or energy efficiency element to them. There are 4 little screw-in faucet adapters to have water efficiency. And then, for reasons I don't know, there is an exit sign in there. So if you would like to take that gift from Consumers Energy as a bonus for you tonight, we'd be happy if you took one home with you. You can't take it apart though. You can't leave the exit sign behind. You have to go find something else to do with it. Put it up in the basement, whatever you'd like. But anyway, these came from consumers today, and so we are sharing the bounty with you tonight. So feel free to take one. If you don't want to take one, I assume consumers will not be offended, but you're welcome to have one of those kits if you'd like.
Okay.
if a local bakery has any efficiency kits, feel free to bring those next month.
I assume that, well, we're being recorded, so it's part of the public, it's in the public eye now. But they don't have any, any projects before us, or there's no conflict of interest in accepting that sort of a gift, I gather.
There is not, no, in this case. They have no projects in front of us. They are doing some utility work in the township, but there's no permitting at local level. They are currently, they're going to be replacing some overhead high voltage lines down on Somerton Road, Somerton, south of Broomfield. On the Chippewa Township side, there's a substation there, and they're basically replacing those conductors, as they call them, the wiring between there and a substation in Gratiot County. They're also replacing some large natural gas underground piping, and that will be up near the airport. There's some underground piping they have that runs across the airport. It crosses Isabella Road just south of River near Delfield, if you know where that is, and heads off to the northwest. And they are going to be redoing some of that underground piping there over the next few months. So you'll see some utility work over that way. They'll be tearing up some trees and anyway, it's quite a big project overall, but nothing that we have to review.
Okay. So don't forget on your way out. Any other correspondence, board reports, or presentations? Okay. So the next item is the first public comment section of the meeting. We have a couple of public hearings tonight. This is not them. This is a general public comment that is always at the front end of our meeting. It is restricted to 3 minutes regarding items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if anyone is here for the public hearings, we'll get to those. But this is just for other items. So if anyone wants to give a public comment on any issue that's not on tonight's agenda, we ask you to come to the podium, give us your name and address for the minutes, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. This public comment is open at 7:12.
I'm Sandy Hellis. I live at 580 South Shepherd Road, Mount Pleasant. And I brought some pictures for illustrations. Would it be okay if I pass those out?
Sure.
All right. Peter Romney told me I needed to ask permission to do that, so, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, hello to everyone. My niece, Jessica Canderas Gallinger, and her husband Jared and 3 kids live at the property at 943 South Isabella Road in Union Township. This is shown on the pictures I just handed out. Jessica has lived there since July of 2016. 2 years ago, Jessica and her family decided to buy a few chickens, then a few ducks, then a few turkeys, and so on. The whole family loves these birds. They built small buildings and put up fences to protect and confine the birds. They get several benefits besides being a fun hobby. They eat the eggs and also process some of the birds for food. They have many different types of chickens and ducks. Some of them are very unique. These birds teach their kids responsibility. The kids interact with the birds, and the birds also get the kids away from the screens for a while. So the issue for tonight, they had no idea they lived in an area that was not zoned for chickens and ducks. Until a few weeks ago when Peter, the planning administrator stopped by and then they found this out. They were very disappointed and sad to find this out, that they might have to get rid of get rid of their birds. As you can see from the pictures, this property is zoned I-1 light industrial. This property is the little piece that sticks out into the yellow R1 rural residential area. It's actually circled in red on the second page, if you guys can all see that. We would like to see if it could be rezoned into R1 so this family could keep all their birds. Some of the facts. Number one, this property has a residential house on it, which this family resides in. There are and have been other residential houses to the south of their house for years. These houses are also in the I-1 light industrial zone. They are all legal, non-conforming houses. Because this property has residential and is being used as residential, it seems like it should be zoned residential. In fact, I don't know if you want to change that whole little block into R1, since it's already occupied with all those residential houses anyway. But we are just concerned with this one property for tonight. Number two, as for availability of public services, of course, utilities and public services are already there because the residential houses are already there. So Union Township should have no expense in rezoning this property if it can be rezoned. Number three, apparently things have changed since the zoning ordinance was adopted, which resulted in these residential homes ending up on this I-1 light industrial zoned area. Hopefully, at least Jessica and Jared's little parcel can be rezoned to R1. Number four, if this property was included in the R1 zone, it would make more of a straight border between the two zones, rather than this one small parcel extending out from the larger I-1 zone. I don't know if that makes a big difference or not, but just thought I'd mention it. So last of all, unfortunately, Jessica and Jared do not have the $1,000 application fee plus the $1,000 deposit for advertising that is required to apply to rezone this property. We are hoping this commission will possibly see valid reasons to rezone this property from the points we are making tonight, both factual and personal. We would really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other public comments?
I'm Jessica Candaris Gallinger. And ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission, thank you for giving me the chance to speak. I'd like to explain why we're requesting to rezone our property from Light Industrial District I-1 to Rural Residential District R1. Our family loves owning chickens and ducks. I've always loved ducks and enjoy learning about their different breeds. We also rely on them for meat and eggs, which adds a lot of value to our daily life. One of the best parts about owning our birds is how our whole family gets involved. My husband, Jared, and I, along with our kids, have spent a lot of time building coops, setting up runs, and picking out our birds. It's been a great bonding experience and something we all cherish. It's also been wonderful to see the kids taking interest in something outside their phones and video games. We have owned our birds for a little over 2 years, not realizing the zoning error, and it hasn't caused any issues in the community. Currently, our property is zoned I-1, but it doesn't really fit with how we use it or with the residential nature of our neighborhood. According to the zoning map, our property is just a tiny square on the edge of the I-1 district and is surrounded by residential areas on 2 sides. It feels like a mistake to leave the property zoned as I-1 when it clearly doesn't align with the surrounding area. It makes much more sense for us to be in the R1 district. Switching to R1 would be a better match for our property's use and align with the community around us. The reason this change makes sense is because rezoning to R1 will more accurately reflect how we use the property and meet our family's needs. The change ensures that our property's use is compatible with its zoning. In the future, if we decide to move, I believe the next homeowners would appreciate this updated zoning as it's a better fit for our community. In summary, rezoning to the R1 will better reflect our property's use and fit with our residential neighborhood. We appreciate you hearing us out, sorry, and hope you find it in your hearts to make this change for our family. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jared Gallinger. We reside at 943 South Isabella. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to our family's story and why we feel so passionately about keeping our chickens and ducks. Our journey began with a simple idea to raise a few birds and to reduce the amount of organic waste going into our trash, with the added benefit of providing farm fresh eggs for our family. We started with just a hen and a rooster that our daughter hatched in class. As a family, we worked together to build the coops and the run, and we watched them grow. I remember how excited we were to try our first egg. At first, our plan had been to maybe have 6 birds, but we quickly fell in love with raising them. Before we knew it, we had chickens and ducks and turkeys and these cute little bald-necked chickens called turkins. So we built more coops and made bigger runs. We spent countless hours together outside working to create a home for our birds, and it's been a hands-on learning experience for our children, teaching them responsibility, the value of hard work, and a connection to nature that is increasingly rare in this digital age. Our birds have done more than just give us a reason to get off our phones. They have provided us with fresh eggs and meat that has nourished our friends and family. There's something deeply satisfying about giving a dozen fresh eggs to a neighbor or cooking a meal with ingredients we've raised ourselves. It's always a way to show appreciation to our loved ones. We understand the need for regulations, but we hope to find a solution that allows us to continue something that has brought our family closer together. Raising poultry isn't just about food for us, it's also about family, community, and connection. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. I want to talk about something important to me and my family, our birds. We have many chickens and ducks at home, and they make us happy. But right now, the zoning rules say... My bad. Right now, the zoning rules say we might not be able to keep them. I'm hoping after you hear us out, this will lead to a change so we can keep them. We provide them with a nice place to live and love having them around. They don't cause any problems since we keep them contained in their pens. Plus, taking care of them gives us something fun to do as a family. I've learned a lot about taking care of animals. I also enjoy having them because they're like pets. My favorite chicken, I named Butters because the way she looks and runs. It's also fun to collect and have our own eggs and share them with family, friends, and neighbors. Thank you for listening, and I hope we can get rezoned so we can keep our birds.
Can you state your name and your address?
Brendan Canderas, and it's 943 South Isabella.
I'm sorry, Brendan?
Yeah,
And then, what was your last name?
Canderas.
Canderas. Oh, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jaden Canderas, and I live at 943 South Isabella. I want to thank you for listening. I really want us to keep our birds because they're important to me and my family. I also think it's cool that they help keep bugs away and make our yard more lively. Plus, having birds gives me something fun to do. I love watching the ducks swim around their little pool. They're so unique, make funny noises that always make me smile. It's also exciting to have our own fresh eggs. The barred rocks chickens are my favorite because of their stripes they have and their feathers. As a family, we promise to continue being responsible and take good care of our birds. We'll keep them in certain areas and make sure they don't cause any problems. I want to thank you guys for listening. I don't want to see the birds go as they make our place special.
Last one.
Remember, state your name. Yeah, say your name. And address. You want me to stand up there with you? It's okay. I know speeches are a little Go ahead. Say your name.
My name is Saria
And your last name.
Clemens.
And where you live. You want me to read it for
Yeah.
you? Is it okay if I read it for her or no? She gets a little nervous around people.
I mean, I think we get the gist of what the thing is likely to be, so.
It's short. It's a half a page.
Okay, yeah, then why don't you go ahead and
Do
read
you
it?
want to read it or do you want me to read it? It's okay. I know. Kids, and I remember she put, hi, I really want to keep my chickens and ducks. It all started with Kuko and Popeye. I actually watched them hatch in my class, which was super exciting. My favorite chicken is Oreo. We watched Oreo hatch at my house, and he's really special to me. Sometimes when I go collect eggs, Oreo will come up to me and sit on my arm. And there's my favorite duck, Banana. She's a runner duck, which means she's really fast, but she's also clumsy, which makes her even more adorable. Watching her waddle around is just funny. These birds aren't just pets to me, they're family. They make me happy, and I've learned so much from taking care of them. It would break my heart if we had to get rid of them, and I don't want to lose them, so I hope I can keep them because they mean a lot to me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
It's okay. I was nervous too.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Not from us.
Okay, we'll assume the other folks are here for other purposes. So we thank the public for their comments. I was wondering why the big crowd was here. It kind of exceeded my expectations.
Now, I was to say, actually, it was in the monthly report that they might be here tonight, so if you read down into it.
Then I will admit to not having read the monthly report carefully enough. I did see chickens in a couple places, but I didn't stop to. All right. So let's. I don't want to disrupt our agenda here, but the township and/or planning commission can initiate rezonings, correct?
That is correct, and my suggestion is if there's interest, we can add a discussion item on your next agenda for this topic.
Yeah.
I would be interested in that
Yeah.
discussion.
And what I would like to know would be any information on the history of why is there that little bump? You know, why was that property kept in the I-1, or whatever? So anything you can tell us would be helpful.
We'll put together a little memo and we'll include a discussion item on the agenda for that.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right. So we will delve into that at our September meeting. So thank you. So we'll close public comment at 7:28. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
So I hope you all feel happy because you were able to provide an excellent civics lesson to the youth of Isabella County tonight. All right.
Felt good.
Yeah.
Felt good.
So we'll move on to our new business. We have 3 new business items, as I mentioned. The first one is a special use permit application, PSUP 24-01, special use permit application from Howling Hammer Builders for an accessory dwelling unit within a single-family dwelling at 3057 Paddock Lane in an ag district. So first we'll have introduction from Rodney, and then we'll hear from the applicant if they're here. Then we'll have the public hearing, and then we'll do our consideration.
Well, thank you. You should have our memo dated August the 8th. As was mentioned, this is a request for approval of an accessory dwelling. Accessory dwelling simply means a second dwelling associated with an otherwise single-family home. The idea is that this second dwelling, you might think of it as a mother-in-law apartment or apartment for adult child. There's often, or an other older adult. Those are often the reasons why they have these accessory dwellings, but not the only reason to have one. This is part of a new construction project, a new single-family home being built. The applicants originally asked to be able to have a living space above a detached garage, and that was turned down. That's not an option in our ordinance. Our ordinance does allow for accessory dwellings like this, but only integrated into the home. The home basically has to look like and function like a single-family home, but there's simply a second dwelling unit within that space. So what you have before you tonight, you have some information on the plans, the layout there. You'll see that as it's now designed, the unit is integrated into the home, connected via climate-controlled room space and the stairway. And the proposal is fairly simple. They're asking for the accessory dwelling element because we let them know that they would have to have a special use permit in order for Peter to be able to sign off on the building permit for the home. You have the information on how they intend to use the property and use that space. The rules for accessory dwelling are in section 6.56. They're detailed in the ordinance. You have it detailed in our report. In the table, the review comments table, we have really two sections we're dealing with. One is the general standards for special use permit approval, and that's the items in the black boxes in the table. These standards apply to any special use in any zoning district. And then item 5, basically starting at the bottom of page 32 of your packet, page 2 of the memo, you'll see the detailed standards for the accessory dwelling starting there. The first one's titled residence as an incidental use. Simply meaning we're not building a duplex. There's a single family home and there's an incidental second dwelling as well. And then basically wrapping over into page 3 of our report, you see the remainder of the requirements that apply to accessory dwellings there. We're happy to answer questions as we go along. I will say broadly at this point that we found that the proposal meets all the applicable ordinances and standards of the township for this type of activity. And so we're very comfortable recommending it to move forward. As we'll talk about as we go on and we note in the report, there is also a request or a need for consideration of temporary relief from sidewalk construction. You can see that actually on the first page of our report down at the bottom, where we do note that this site is an area that under our current sidewalk policy, it would qualify under the standard number 4, or criterion number 4. And so we're very comfortable with recommending the project to including that granting of a temporary relief from sidewalk construction. And with that, as we go along, I'm happy to answer any questions we have.
Okay. Do we also have the applicant here or no?
Yes.
Okay.
And the property owner.
Okay.
I do have a question. So, as an accessory detached, that would not be acceptable. Now that it's attached, you still have to have a special use permit?
Yes, yeah. The ordinance simply prohibits an accessory dwelling in a separate structure. As it's currently drafted, the only way to have an accessory dwelling is if it is inside, made part of the single-family home, the principal building that the home is in.
But you have to have a special use
You
permit.
still need a special use permit.
So
yes.
I'm going to use my house as an example. I have a room above my garage. It's just a storage room. If I want to change that into a living space, I need to come in and get a special use permit?
So attached garage? Or
It's attached.
Okay. So if you're making it living space for your home,
Yep,
you don't need anything from the township other than building permit.
right.
If you are proposing to make that a separate dwelling unit, that is, its
Oh,
own
a
kitchen-
separate dwelling, I'm sorry, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
A separate, it's attached, but it's a separate dwelling.
Right.
I
yeah.
see. Mine has access, I see.
Yeah, I mean, if it's simply part of your home, your
It's part of my
bonus room, there's no issue with that at all. It's simply if you're proposing to create a separate dwelling, some other family or individual is going to live there as their residence. and that separate space, that's when you would need the special use permit.
But I guess in my reading of the materials, I was under the impression that they're not specifically proposing to have like some stranger that has no connection to them living there. Is that right?
Well, accessory dwelling unit is simply that you have essentially a separate, we'll call it family. That's, the ordinance refers to family in a broader way than we might think. When we think of the nuclear family, parents and children or anything like that, family can be one person. A separate family living unit, essentially is what we're talking about here. So there's a family living in the main home, and there's a separate family, even if they're related. Let's say like grandparents or an adult child, even where they are. That is an entirely separate living space for them. That's when you would have an accessory dwelling. It's interesting. This is a little bit of a fuzzy area because, for example. And we've suggested this to people, and some people have used this option. A master bedroom suite is almost its own apartment. If you had a kitchenette, you have an apartment. Often especially today with these master bedroom suites with the full bath and a large sitting area and all that kind of thing. So if someone were to create what amounted to a second master bedroom suite and maybe even had a kitchenette in there. If it's integrated into the home, that is, there's no locked doors, there's no separate entrance. It's just another bedroom in this home. That's just part of the home, and you might have your mother-in-law or whoever staying there, or an adult child there. But as far as the township is concerned, or as far as zoning is concerned, that's one single-family home. It simply has some really nice bedrooms.
Yeah.
In this case, this is a separate space. It's connected and it's integrated physically into the building that the home is in. But if it is a separate living environment, separate dwelling unit.
But what I'm trying to establish is, well, number one, is this one going to be a rental or not? And does the special use assume or automatically give that accessory residence the right to be a rental?
So the applicant, and I'm sure they'll answer the question as well, but they do in their packet. They indicate they're not intending to rent it at this point. They can. If they choose to turn it into a rental, it would simply become part of our rental inspection program. They would have to register it with the township. It would be inspected. It would have to qualify it would have to meet the standards of our housing licensing ordinance, and the property maintenance code that applies to other rental units in the township. So absolutely they could do that, and they would simply follow that process in that case. But that's only if they choose to go that route. They don't need that approval until they choose to actually make a rental unit.
Yeah, but if we approve a special use, we are approving a person's ability to make that conversion at some later time if they want to.
Right. Our ordinance does, the accessory dwelling section of the zoning ordinance does not address whether it's family living there or if it's rented. And that's a deliberate choice, really. Some ordinances, accessory dwelling standards have evolved somewhat. In many cases, they originate from the idea of multi-generational living. Have older parents that need more care, and you bring them into your home, but you give them a separate apartment, have some independence. Or in other cases, older parents need some care, and so the kids build a separate unit to attach to the parents' house to help take care of the parents. So that sort of was where it started. But it is completely also appropriate that an accessory dwelling unit could be a rental unit because perhaps there's an interest in having some income. So maybe again, an older adult that is on fixed income. This is a way to have a little bit of extra income, pay taxes and other things. So our ordinance does not discriminate on that. We simply note that if they do vote to be a rental unit, we have a rental inspection program that they'd have to abide by.
Okay. But this body doesn't have the right to approve an SUP with condition that it's not a rental?
I would not recommend it. I will say this, that if you find that that's necessary for them to meet the general standards for a special use permit, some of these standards of sort of the being harmonious with the neighborhood type stuff. You could head down that road. I don't see any instance in this case where that really is warranted. But it would be something that I would only do if you find it's necessary for them to comply and be consistent with those general standards for a special use permit.
So help me understand, what is exactly the threshold that goes from an addition on a house to an accessory building use? Because, I mean, so I have a master bedroom. If I take the window, and I have got a master bathroom in it, if I take the window out and put in French doors and do a patio outside, that's an exterior entrance to the master bedroom. Is that now an accessory? So is it kitchen facilities?
Essentially, it's a self-contained dwelling unit. It has the facilities needed, and the ordinance describes them, but essentially kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, to function independently as a dwelling unit. It may have a separate entrance, or it may share a common entrance with the main house, but it is a separate living environment where all the necessary elements for a dwelling are included.
I find that confusing with the language in section 7(5)(b), the attached accessory buildings, which seems to be saying just the opposite, except where otherwise defined in this document. But that seems to be contradictory then. The attached accessory buildings, unless otherwise specified in this section, accessory buildings or structures which are attached to the principal building shall be considered a part of the principal building for the purposes of determining conformance with area setback height and bulk requirements.
So what that's saying is that the accessory dwelling unit doesn't have a different set of standards. Those are basically the dimensional standards.
So that's what that's referring to.
Setback height, the same rules that apply to the main house apply to the accessory dwelling.
I still find it kind of confusing, the different
And the reason that language is there is actually that word accessory. When it comes to structures, we often, that word accessory is tied to structure, accessory structure, a garage, a shed, pole barn. And so there, I think part of the reason that language ended up in there was to make clear, we're not talking about those things, because those do have a separate set of setback requirements. Some of those structures can be as close as 5 feet to a property line, even though the main house would have to be significantly farther away.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just still not, this isn't an area of the ordinance that we've discussed recently, so I guess I mean, if I understand that if the requirement is that it has a special use, then so be it. But I still find the use of a residential accessory building that is connected, I struggle to see the difference between an addition to a house and, I mean, it sounds like the lesson learned here is that when the applicant wants to make an addition to a house, that they just simply don't put a kitchen in the plans and add that later.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you don't want to build a porch, you just put a board across the door, and then once it's approved, you take the board off and build a porch.
Well, keep in mind that the infrastructure has to be put in, and so it's going to end up in the plans, and it's going to raise the question, what's going on here? So and the reason, maybe I can explain why this is a special use permit. First of all, it doesn't come up terribly often. As you've said, we've not had to deal with it before. We did actually amend this section of the ordinance a little while ago, but it was actually just correcting some typographical type errors in it. So it was not a big discussion item at the time. But because it is not something that comes up every day, and because these are an extra dwelling unit in a single family home, often in a neighborhood like this one is, there is potential for concerns from the neighbors. You essentially now you have potentially two families living in what people expect and think of as a single family home. And so the special use permit is simply, primarily, the reason for it is this public hearing process to provide the people in the immediate neighborhood, or anybody that might have an interest, the opportunity to learn about it, and if they wish to come in and make comments on their thoughts about the application. By doing that, we don't have any surprises. They have the opportunity to learn about it. They have the opportunity to speak about it. Whatever may happen with ultimately the application, if it is approved, they're at least aware of what's coming and exactly what the rules are that come into play. So there are some communities that have moved this activity to a permitted use, so simply some kind of zoning permit. That may be something to consider down the road, but as I said, right now this is rare enough that it's really better to notify the neighbors and give them a chance to be aware of what's going on before it's constructed, so that they understand the scope of it. There are no questions, no rumors essentially that can get out, because often rumors can be far bigger than the actual. In this way, the actual information gets in their hands early on.
So the special use is ultimately for a multiple family unit.
It is not a multiple family unit.
It
It
is
can
not a
be your
multiple
kid.
family.
This is a
If your
single
kid
family
goes in
home.
and has a kitchen and a
Yeah,
bathroom.
this is a single family home that has, the word incidental comes into play here, an incidental second dwelling unit that's made part of the building that single family home is in. It is not I mean, you could think of it as a duplex, but again, this is not two equal units.
Right.
This is a primary unit and an accessory unit.
Okay. Just trying to get the
Yeah.
sense of the language. It all makes perfect sense to me, but, yeah.
I guess the only point that I would make before we can move on and talk about the actual special use is that I know that in the past, the Planning Commission has talked about with the aging of the boomer generation and people wanting to age in place, that we wanted to make it easier for people to do exactly this sort of thing. If they have an aging parent or a dependent, an adult dependent that requires maybe independent space, but also in the same parcel, that we make it easier for that in our zoning ordinance to do so. Submitting a special use permit doesn't feel like the easiest course of action, but maybe that we can put a pin in that and make that a conversation point the next time we're looking at ordinance revisions.
Well, we did, although it's not addressed in the ordinance, in the fee schedule, the Board of Trustees did address this issue in part, that the fee for this is significantly less than a normal special use permit. And that was in recognition that the scope of information, the scope of review is much less than might be required, for example, for a gas station or some other large commercial special use. So it is, it and a few other similar limited scale activity items have a much lower fee. I mean, it's still a cost. The fee's $325? Yeah, I believe it's $325 versus normally closer to $1,000 for a special use permit. So it is what it is. I know it's still a cost, it's still a burden, but it's significantly less. As I said, the main reason is because of the potential for conflict with the neighbors, concerns from the neighbors, and simply the ability to get the information out before anything's done, as this is what's proposed. So they can even if all that they do is ask questions and find out, oh, well, that sounds reasonable, and that's often what happens when you see the plans. But if you have unknowns, the unknowns can become very big and scary looking, but the known is fairly simple. So.
Okay. So we do still need to conduct the public hearing, but before we do that, is there anything that the applicants want to say by way of introduction?
Yes, please. I'm Joanne Tennyson. I am a principal with Howlinghammer Builders. Obviously, we were the designer, and we've been working with the homeowner to design a home that we felt fit in the neighborhood. We've had more than a couple of hiccups, and certainly we found ourselves, having been in the building industry for a combined of over 50 years between my partner and I, had never run into a situation like this that was this confusing with the zoning. We were considering what we would consider a mother-in-law suite. Could possibly also be used, both of the residents are physicians or in the medical profession. It could also be used as an office for them, however they choose to use it. I think one of the things Kristen's hoping is that when her son is college, he stays home. He doesn't move out on her. But in no means was this meant to be a rental unit. And the term accessory dwelling was something that we had never run into before. Having built in Union Township for a long time, done a lot of bonus rooms over garages that were comprised of living space, bedroom, bathroom, sometimes kitchenettes. We were really totally taken by surprise by this. So worked long with Peter to try and come up with something that fit within the ordinance. And if you look at the plan, what we have here is a very nice home. The additional living space that is placed over the garage is, we consider it an integral part of the house. There are no doors that are right there that differentiate it from that mudroom back entry of the house. We totally feel that this is appropriate and certainly fits the neighborhood. It's an extremely attractive house, if I do say so myself. And this was not an inexpensive process for Ms. Telfer to go through. Obviously, the building permit costs in Union Township are extremely high, much higher than anywhere else we build. And while there was the $350 fee for this hearing, there also was a publication fee of in excess of $500. So it wasn't a cheap thing, on top of the fact that this obviously has held us up for several months, trying to break ground, and we are approaching bad weather. So we hope that you'll take a look at this and you'll decide that certainly we fall in all of the parameters of what should be being built in Union Township, and that you'll approve our application.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant before we move to the public hearing? Okay, well, we're going to be deliberating, so we may have questions at that point. Okay, so we've heard from staff and the applicant, so let's move to the public hearing. Whenever we have a public hearing, we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak that wants to speak. So once we open the public hearing, if anyone wants to give a comment on the special use permit application, they're welcome to come to the podium, give us their name and address for the minutes, address their comments to the Planning Commission, and limit at least their initial comments to 3 minutes. If there's anyone online, we'll also give them an opportunity to speak. So the public hearing on special use permit 24-01 is open at 7:52.
Thank you so much. My name is Kristen Telfor. I reside at 932 Deer Run here in Mount Pleasant. I appreciate all of your questions because I actually had the exact same ones as we went through this process. Especially once we connected the building. Currently I reside in a home where my master bedroom is over our garage, and so that's exactly what we planned it for. My parents, who are getting older, live in Florida, and they come and they stay with me for at least 2 months in the summertime, often 3 months in the summertime. And the plan was basically to give them kind of an extra living space, so that they wouldn't feel like they, were in our space, but they had their own independent living space. But also, as they grow older, if they had any healthcare issues, that I would be able to have them come into the home if necessary, or utilize anything that was necessary that way. And as Joe mentioned, my son, he's 15. I've been turning his arm already, trying to talk him into going to CMU instead of leaving me to go someplace else. So I've been teasing him that, he'd have this nice living space that would, be apart from right next to mom, that he could live in. But it's never been any intention to rent the unit. It's a part of my home. The entrance is the same part of my home. I would highly encourage you to look at how the township has set up the current guidelines, because it's placed us behind by 2 months in order to do this process, which has been hugely discouraging. Anyone moving in to Union Township, I can't imagine, especially anyone who is elderly and trying to go through this process. It's been extremely discouraging to go through this process. So I would encourage you to look at that and waiver it in some way moving forward, because if it's in your home, it's in your dwelling. I honestly think it should be your business to do what you want to do with it, honestly. But it's never been our intention to rent it. It wouldn't be our intention to rent it. The use would be for my parents, and like I said, if I get lucky enough to keep my son at home, it would be to utilize for him as he goes through college. But that would be the utilization in the space for it. And I'm happy to answer any questions in regards to the use or space, but that's the intention behind it. And if you look at the plans, like I said, it's fully integrated in the house, and that's why we've had a little bit of a stumbling block as to why we weren't complying, why we were feeling like we were kind of almost being punished for why we were being called in front of to have to do this. So I appreciate your time, and again, if you have any questions, please let me know.
I have just one question.
Well,
sure.
before, we're
sorry.
still in the public hearing.
yeah,
and
you're right. I'm
I
sorry.
made the
You're correct.
I made the mistake of forgetting to remind the applicant that they don't need to be part of the public hearing because they have their own floor to speak. So let's go ahead and ask, are there any other any other comments from the public while we're in the public hearing? No one's online, correct?
Correct.
And there were no written comments received on this project? Okay. So, last call for public comments on special use permit application 24-01. Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment up, and now we can proceed with essentially commission deliberation, but if there are questions for the applicant, let's have those.
My only question was, and we can talk a little bit about special use and that sort of thing, but I know Rodney had suggested not placing conditions on the ability to rent, but do you have an opinion on whether or not you would accept conditions on renting the place at some point?
I feel like if you made someone go through this process, then you shouldn't have conditions on
Sure.
it. Not that it's
Yeah.
my intention to,
Right.
but I feel like, hey, I've already jumped through all of the hoops, then I should have something that should be an unconditioned use. That's just my personal opinion on it. Moving forward, I would change how it's worded, because I think the wording sets up situations like this that are horrendous. I mean, this is absolutely nothing that I would have ever dreamed of, honestly, with trying to build something simple for like a simple room, honestly.
Yeah. And for the record, I would have given the same response you just did, but I was just curious if we're having
Yeah.
conversation, what your thoughts were. So,
Okay, thank you. So next on our agenda is commission review of the application, and which we've sort of been doing already, and then commission deliberation and action. So it's really in our court now. So let me ask this. In the past, we've sometimes gone through the special use standards one by one and given people an opportunity to voice their, commissioners an opportunity to voice their opinions. What's your pleasure? Do you want to do that? Or do we want
Would
to
the
have
chair
a-
entertain a motion?
I'd like to discuss at least for a minute, just to get my opinions out.
Yeah, I mean, we can either have, a motion is not out of order. We sometimes will discuss first, and then when it appears that the discussion is petering out, that's when we usually go to a motion, but.
Well, I think I'll make the motion, and then the discussion can happen as part of that. I will move to approve as presented, using the language available to us at the top of page 35. And I can articulate that verbally if you'd prefer.
We're being recorded, so why don't you?
Move to approve PSUP 24-01 special use application for an accessory dwelling within the principal building of a new single-family dwelling at 3057 Paddock Lane, parcel number 14-034-30-0009-01 in the southwest quarter of Section 34 and in the Ag Agricultural Zoning District, finding that it fully complies with Section 6.56, accessory dwelling, and Section 14.3.j, standards for special use approval, and to approve the associated request for temporary relief from sidewalk construction along the frontage of the subject parcel, with a finding that it is consistent with criteria number 4 of the Township's 2018 sidewalk relief policy.
I support that.
Okay, so the motion was made by Olver, as just stated, and was seconded by Gross. Clearly, we haven't even discussed the sidewalk piece of it yet, but, so the motion is on the floor, so it is available for discussion. So, again, your pleasure. Do you want to go through the SUP standards one by one, or do you just want to have a more open kind of discussion?
Let's have an open discussion.
Well, I would only make a point, since we're in a discussion phase now, that I appreciate everybody's desire to move through a meeting as quickly as possible, but I do think it's important that we give ourselves time for conversation before we make motions to just move on. So we can talk about it now, but I understand the desire to get a motion on the table, but we're not anywhere near out of time yet. So.
Yeah, well, I'm not prejudging how long our discussion might be once a motion's been made. So, if any commissioner has concerns or issues that they want to bring up, then please feel free to do so.
I don't particularly have concerns with this particular SUP outside of the fact that I'm still at a loss for why there is an SUP in front of us. It's not clear to me, based on my current understanding of ordinance, why we're actually looking at a residential SUP. But, and I would, if the rest of the Planning Commission supports the idea, I would like to see a conversation about, what this ordinance does look like, on a future agenda, to have a conversation about it. The only reason I take SUPs, I'd like to make sure that we give time to SUPs, is because an SUP does, all rights given to the SUP does carry on. It sticks with the land, it doesn't stay with the owner. So when we grant something, we're granting it in perpetuity for the future. So I just like to make sure that we are having that conversation. But outside of making that point, I don't have any specific concerns here. I know that historically we have gone line by line. I don't know if that's necessary for a residential one.
Yeah, we've sometimes done it for non-residential ones, but we haven't had very many residential. Well, we've had like in-home businesses, that type of thing. Okay, other comments or concerns? That is a good point, though, that they're building a home, but they probably won't live there forever, and the SUP stays with the property, and so it could become a rental at some point, even though they're not. They don't necessarily have that intention.
As a point of clarification, if that did happen hypothetically, then the future owner would have to go through the process of getting it set for a rental, getting inspected, all of those types of things. So there's another firewall there.
Yes, that's a separate ordinance. It's a separate application process. Simply, if they'd like to use it as a rental, they simply apply to have it inspected and certified, and from then on, there's an annual inspection process for it.
I would support what Commissioner Buckley said about discussion in the future, at a future meeting. I think any discussion is worth having. Not applying to this particular, what we have in front of us right now, but I would appreciate the opportunity to have some discussion with all the information in front of us.
I agree. If the contractor's confused, the owners are confused, and we're confused about the wording, then
Right.
I think we do need some more clarification of that wording. And we have seen with other things that we've looked at that we all look at it slightly differently in terms of how we interpret that language. And so that would be good to try to help clarify so it's more self-evident and not opaque.
I'd just be interested in learning more about the background too, because I literally live across the street from someone with a mother-in-law suite, and that is not a special use. So I'm not sure exactly when our ordinance shifted to to require a special use, so.
There's not always a guarantee that it was put in with permits.
Well,
I will
absolutely.
say.
That's certainly understandable as well, yeah, yeah.
I guess I just want to ask, and obviously good practice to visit all the sites, but I haven't been out to this one. I'm looking at the survey, right? And it shows that this is one parcel among several in this immediate vicinity. Are all of those other parcels occupied? Are there homes there, or are they open at this point? I'm just curious how many neighbors there actually
Yeah.
are at this point.
Paddock Lane is a cul-de-sac subdivision, and I believe all of the other lots have residences on them now.
Okay.
Ms. Telfer actually bought I think the last two lots, one that borders Crawford Road and the other that's on Paddock Lane. Her intent is to we plan on building on that lot that's actually off of Crawford, that's more inside the cul-de-sac subdivision itself. We did, upon her purchase of the property, just to give you, I'm not trying to gain your sympathy, but this has been an unbelievable nightmare for her. She purchased these two lots with the intent that she would build on one, eventually sell the other lot. We found out that there was an unregistered county drain that runs diagonally across the lot that borders Crawford Road. So it's basically non-buildable. Then we also found that there was on that particular lot, there's the DNR or DEQ has also tagged a small area as a wetland. None of this is recorded. There was, upon her purchase, she had no way of knowing this. Obviously, title work was done on it. The realtors didn't know. If the previous owner knew, it certainly wasn't disclosed upon sale. So she's gone through an awful lot to try to get to this point, and yet she's still, and I'm sure that she's had lots of people tell her you should just dump the lot and move somewhere else. She really wants to live in Union Township. So she's been willing to weather this, and she's been a real trooper through the whole thing. We've been at this now for several years, trying to actually get to this point. So, but yeah, it is a very nice subdivision, which is why we worked so hard to design a really attractive home.
Okay. Is this what's called parcel 1 on here? Is that a double lot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. In the platted sub, it's actually 2 lots.
Okay.
I don't think it's germane to our conversation in terms of the SUP, but I'm guessing you've already confirmed that that a potential rental is permissible within a covenant if it's in force for the subdivision?
We hadn't even discussed it, so I don't know if there was, if there were within that, the HOA, if there's an overlying restriction, because it wasn't a part of her concern. There was never any intent to turn this into a rental.
I'm not, like I say, I don't think it's germane to our conversation in terms of approving an SUP, but it may be something worth investigating on behalf of the homeowner to determine whether or not there'll be conflict in the future. Because the township doesn't get involved with covenants on the subdivision,
Right.
but
There was nothing in the covenants that precluded this, what is now being called an accessory dwelling.
Okay.
So that living space over the garage, there was nothing in the
Sure.
covenants that precluded that.
sure, yeah.
Okay. So I just asked Rodney then, I mean, remind me with public hearings, there, in addition to the thing in the paper, there's also the mailing to the people within the 300 feet or no?
That is correct.
Okay.
Basically, there's the publication in the newspaper one time, at least 15 days before the hearing date. It is also mailed to all the property owners, all the properties within 300 feet, all the addressed properties within 300 feet of this parcel, in this case, the 2 parcels.
Yeah.
And it's also posted here at the Township Hall and on our website.
Okay. Okay. And certainly we had no other comments other than the applicant, so. All right, other concerns, comments? We do have the motion on the floor, so.
Well, I just think this proposal conforms and can conform with everything, and I agree with Commissioner Buckley that we want to make it easier for these things to happen as far as a mother-in-law suite, things like that. So Seemed pretty simple to me.
Yeah, again, we didn't go through it line by line, but we certainly all read it, and I certainly agree that it's not, it seems like something that should be harmonious within that area. Okay, other comments? Ready to vote? Okay. So this is a motion to approve the special use permit, as stated in the motion. Roll call vote, please.
Gross,
Yes.
Squadrito,
Yes.
Lap,
Yes.
Over,
Yes.
Thering,
Yes.
Buckley.
Yes.
All yeses.
Okay, motion carries. So at least one hurdle is over at this point, or passed. So good luck with the project. Thanks.
I know.
We certainly want to stick to our agenda and move on, but
I was going to say, may I take just a moment for a comment that may at least help with some of the...
yeah.
The accessory dwelling element is new in the 2020 ordinance. It was not part of the 1991 ordinance. So prior to the adoption of the current zoning ordinance in September of 2020, it was not possible to do this. The answer would have been no, to do what they proposed. Where it may exist a couple of different ways. We have certain districts that allow duplexes as well as single-family homes in the same zoning district. So there may be some that were approved as duplexes. There may be some that were done without permits.
Well,
But nonetheless, prior to 2020, when we entered the 1991 zoning ordinance, there was no option for what they were proposing to do tonight. So this was an addition in the document. It was done as a special use because it's something new, because it's new creature that may be in otherwise what people think of as a single-family neighborhood. This new thing, and accessory dwelling may become part of it. There are some communities that allow them very broadly, allow a separate structure or apartment above a garage, various broader elements to come into play. And that is something we may want to consider in certain cases as part of an amendment. But this particular thing was introduced by our consultant at the time as something that was valuable to do. But it was done essentially, you might say, the introductory version of it, so it's available to the community, but done in a way that the neighbors get notified. So it certainly may be appropriate to consider broadening the scope of it, either making it a permitted use, or even considering broadening it to allow other types of accessory dwellings, separate, garage and other elements. All those things are possible. They have pros and cons. There's a lot of literature out there we can certainly share about what some people call ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And it's certainly something that we can look at. But as I said, the main reason for being a special use permit is because it is new to our 2020 ordinance. And that in that way, we're not surprising anybody by doing this. Because as I said, and this happens many times, the unknown thing becomes a big monster. The monster in the closet. You can't see it, therefore it must be huge. That unknown becomes a monstrous thing. But when information is provided, a simple notice that says, this is what's going on, here's what they're doing. You saw the description, you read it in the motion. That same description is almost word for word in the public notice. They go, well, that doesn't sound so bad. If they come in and look at the plans, it's, wow, that's a great house. And so all of a sudden that unknown becomes a very small thing, and so nobody comes to the meeting. Now, I didn't ask Peter how many people may have called him and asked him about this, but in reality, anybody could just come in and take a look. I think we did have one, right? We had one person come to the counter and look at the application materials, and they didn't come to the meeting tonight. So there is a value in the special use permit process. Maybe over time there won't be a need for it anymore, but there is a value in it, just simply to keep that unknown from becoming this huge monster when it doesn't need to be.
Could I just ask though, are you saying that under the 1991 ordinance, that it would be illegal to have a bathroom and a kitchenette associated with a bedroom in some other part of your house where you already have your main kitchen and maybe one or two other bathrooms.
That's been said several times, and I said that was not illegal. Right?
But,
That's considered part of your single-family home.
But then I'm really I understand
have-
when they were doing it in a detached garage. But if it's part of the same structure, then I don't understand what would have been illegal under the old.
So
still don't know what the
we are.
threshold is.
In part, we're cutting the very fine line. You were taking it right to the edge of, well, when does it become an apartment? When is it a master bedroom suite, and when is it an apartment? And all we can do is follow the ordinance as to what that says and what the defined terms are. What I will say is that an accessory dwelling unit is independent. It may be in the same building, just as a duplex has 2 units in the same building. Just as an apartment building may have 6 or 8 units in the same building. They may all share the same common hallway to get to the doors of the elevator. But they have independent living space. All the requirements of a dwelling are in that independent living space. Where you're talking about, and I would say this, that I think a key element is that for what you described, that what amounts to a master bedroom suite that happens to have a kitchenette in it, that does not have a separate entrance. It does not have a locked door off a common hallway to the front foyer, where the foyer is open to the public, you might say, and there's a locked door into the main house and a locked door into the master bedroom suite. Those designs would be, that's a design like this one, where they have a common hallway and a common mudroom area, you might say a common foyer through the mudroom, but there's a separate entrance into that living space up above the garage. It is able to be entirely self-contained. Lock the door behind you. I don't even need to talk to those people in the main house if I don't want to. That is an accessory dwelling unit as far as our ordinance is defined. I understand this is gradations. This is a relatively new idea. But frankly, it's not. It is a new iteration of a very old idea. If you own a house from the 1870s, 1880s, a lot of them had a carriage house where they literally put the carriages back there, and they had an apartment above for the folks that took care of the horses that were associated with those carriages. So that kind of living environment once existed commonly, but it went away in the 20th century, largely in terms of how we build houses. It is coming back now, and so that is being addressed in our ordinance in this way. And frankly, the need for, whether it's multi-generational housing, all the things they described, taking care of aging parents, allowing an adult child to have some independence, or a rental unit simply for some additional income. All of those things are completely legitimate reasons to have an accessory dwelling unit. But as I said, there is always the potential for conflict with
those. Don't strike me as separate families, though. I know you said they are, but it doesn't really strike me. Wouldn't the most sensible distinction just be rental? If you're making money off of it, it's a deal. You got to come do all the hoops. But if it's even if it's your cousins, let alone your parents, I don't know.
Well, the problem is that, I work with a lot of contractors. I've done my own contracting work, and I can assure you that if somebody like me, and there's a lot of me's out there, walks in and sees, oh, this is going to be called an accessory building if I do this, I will skirt the system by simply getting a permit to do what I can do, and then replacing an interior door with an exterior door and a deadbolt, and it's just, to me, without having it, that's why I want to see something.
We're happy to help people
Sure,
to
right.
understand
That's
where the lines are. Mm-hmm. And I will say this project went through several iterations to get to a version that could be approved, because they really wanted the detached building. Yeah, and so there were several very weird iterations of that. It just doesn't make any sense. And they finally got to a version that Peter could approve and say, yes, that meets our ordinance, and we could move it forward. So there's, to some extent, people have what they want. what they want may not fit our ordinance because our ordinance has certain requirements.
I get exactly
That's
what
all.
you're saying, Rodney. The point I'm trying to make is that there's plenty of people who will just simply skirt the ordinance because we're not providing clear articulated detail as to what we can and cannot do. We're putting it into special use. So
We did provide, Vera, I will call you on that one because we absolutely provided clear direction for this project at every step along the way.
I'm not
and,
suggesting-
and frankly, the ordinance is clear.
Rodney,
The ordinance
you're
is clear.
not
as
letting
well.
me speak, and you have a habit of doing this in meetings
I'm
when
going
I'm
to do
trying
it
to
this
make a
time
point.
because I do not want to get in a situation where you are calling out something that's simply not true.
Rodney, I'm asking.
Excuse me, is this kind of necessary?
We're getting to the
Well, I'm
point where
simply-
we
I
need
keep
to
getting
move on
cut
with
off
our
and I can't
agenda,
even finish
but
the
I'll
point.
let Commissioner Buckley finish his point.
The only point that I've been asking for is to have a separate agenda item conversation about this so we can review our ordinance and determine what's best moving forward. There doesn't need to be defensiveness and there doesn't need to be 10 minutes worth of explanation every time I ask a question. I get what you're saying. So let's just, it sounds like the board is interested. Let's just do it and we'll move on to the next agenda item.
If you're interested, we'll certainly add it on. I have no objection.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we should talk about this one.
I hope the applicant realizes they're in an agricultural district which allows them to have chickens. You're welcome.
Yes, thanks. All right. So we'll move on. We have a couple other new business items tonight. Actually, this next one is not, we've seen it before, but we're moving on with it. So this is the text amendment, 24-01, which is the proposed zoning ordinance amendments related to section 11, which is the signs. So we saw that last month and we agreed to send it forward to a public hearing. And so we are at that point. Anything to say specifically by way of introduction before we move to the public hearing?
Not particularly. You have our report. The ordinance itself is essentially the same as you reviewed last time. I think there were a couple of typos that were noted, and they've been corrected in this draft. The goal is to add flexibility and frankly to create circumstances where some additional signage can be developed, both freestanding signage, modernization of older freestanding signs, and potentially some additional signage on buildings by adjusting how those requirements are calculated. So we're looking forward to see this move forward if you're in agreement with it.
Okay, thank you. So for this public hearing, because it's the zoning ordinance thing, announcement in the newspaper, probably on the website, not individual mailings because it's not individuals, but public has been notified about this. So we'll move on to the public hearing. Again, we always want to give everybody who wants to speak the opportunity to speak. So once the public hearing is open, anyone who wishes to address the Planning Commission on the proposed zoning ordinance amendments is welcome to do so. If you're in the room, you come to the podium, give us your name and address for the minutes, and limit your comments, at least initial comments, to 3 minutes. If anybody is online, there are instructions for making your presence known, and we can have you speak. So the public hearing on the proposed zoning ordinance amendments, P-Text 24-01, is open at 8:23.
There's no one online.
Okay, we don't have anybody online tonight, and at the moment, the audience has departed, so we don't have audience members. I assume no written communications on this? No written communications were received. So second call for public comments during the public hearing on the P-Text 24-01. And last call. Okay, so let the record show that no public comments were offered during the public hearing. Go ahead and close the public hearing at 8:24. So we've had the public hearing, so the next step is commission deliberation and action. And you've heard the recommendation from Rodney, and so this is on the floor for us to consider. I think it looks like it's in good order. I mean, you never know ahead of time exactly what weird situation is going to develop that you didn't anticipate, but it looks pretty thorough, and so I'm comfortable with it.
Well, as a commissioner who has all the time in the world, I will still proceed with a motion to recommend to the Board of Trustees that the proposed amendments to Section 11 signs and Section 2.2 definitions of the zoning ordinance, number 20-06, be adopted as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, so there's a motion by Olver and a second by Lapp to recommend to the Board of Trustees that the proposed amendments be adopted as presented. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Waring,
Yes.
Gross,
Yes.
Olver,
Yes.
Spadrito,
Yes.
Lapp,
Yes.
Buckley,
Yes.
all yeses.
Okay, thank you. So that will go to the Board of Trustees and hopefully will be on its way to approval. Next item is another proposed zoning ordinance amendments. This is PTEX 24-02, which are amendments to sections 14.2, site plan review, and 12.5, non-conforming sites. You may have talked to us about, but I think we're seeing this for the first time. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, this, if you're seeing this for the first time, I think we briefly talked about it previously. I should have our memo dated August 12th. This is, as noted in the memo, is coming in part out of our involvement with the Redevelopment Ready Communities Program from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. As noted in the memo, our Board of Trustees has made that part of their global ends, that as part of their commerce, economic development friendly policies in the community, to focus on these things. And one of those criteria, page 57 of your packet, page 2 of the memo, you see one of the criteria that Redevelopment Ready Communities best practices there talks about approving permitted uses at the Planning Commission or staff level with the goal of streamlining the process as much as possible. And what we have noted in recent months, really over the last year or two, is that there have been more and more final site plans that have been coming to you completely ready for approval. And that reflects a great deal of effort by Peter and by our Public Services Department and by the applicant to ensure those plans are completely in line with the ordinance. In part, this reflects our preliminary site plan process, where we have a lot of the conversation early on with the applicant and help them to understand what needs to be fixed on the plan, or what items are coming up on the final site plan they may need to be aware of. You've often seen our reports. For the preliminary site plan, we always have a section, sort of coming attractions. Here are some things you need to know about. What we found is because more of these plans are coming to you, essentially with a recommendation to approve it as presented, under both the state act and our zoning ordinance, you as a planning commission are required to approve that plan. There is no discretion. The state law both in our ordinance both say that if you find that it meets all of the applicable standards of the ordinance, it must be approved. So what we looked at is there an opportunity here to look at perhaps removing these kind of, what you might say, rubber stamp items off of your agenda, so they're not taking up time, but also so that the applicant may be able to get an answer faster and be able to move ahead on their development project faster. So the idea of looking at, in those cases where it's determined by staff that the plan does fully comply with the ordinance, that in that, as this is drafted, in that case, a final site plan could be simply approved administratively. It'd be like our minor site plan process, where it would simply be acted upon by the zone administrator, and then the applicant can move forward from there to a building permit and other actions. So that's the first part of it, was that idea of streamlining the approval process for these plans. Essentially, we're giving them a benefit to those developers that choose to follow ordinance, choose to put plans together that are solid and ready to be constructed. By eliminating what might be at least a few weeks potentially, wait until they can come before you. And especially in the case where, as I said, you would not have any discretion to do other than approve the plan. So that's the first part, and really the bulk of this amendment is looking at that. It's a lot of text, but in reality, the two flowcharts really cover what this is talking about. The text is just the regulation that backs up what's summarized in the flowchart there on page 60, top of page 60, page 2 of our memo, page 2 of the draft ordinance. You see there that preliminary and final site plan approval process, and you can see the option in the middle that if the plan does comply fully, that it can go straight to the zoning administrator, and if it doesn't, then it would be brought to you. And if it doesn't comply, these would be typically things like we have flexibility in our ordinance related to landscaping, where the applicant can propose an alternative standard that you may find is consistent with the intent of the ordinance, but may not meet the exact requirements. So maybe so many less shrubs or different kind of design. That's not something that can be approved administratively. That has to be done by the Planning Commission. There may be something with parking standard. That's another area of flexibility, where they can propose an alternative standard. But that again would be something that you would be reviewing. That's not something that Peter can approve administratively. So the idea is these things would be addressed as part of the preliminary site plan approval. But in cases where they're not, the final site plan would be coming to you. Same thing with the same issue with the temporary relief of sidewalk construction. If it wasn't dealt with at the preliminary site plan level, then the final plan would be coming to you. That's the bulk of the proposal here. The latter part of the amendment is related to section 12.5, which is the non-conforming site section. This section has been very useful in helping to gain some benefits, some improvements to older sites in an economical way for the property owners, because it specifically says not everything has to be fixed. It doesn't have to be brought up as if it was a brand new site. And that 12.5 focuses on kind of a narrow range of things. Number one, public safety deficiencies, and then there's sort of a broad menu of possibilities of which a few choices need to be made. Right now, that 12.5 is the wording of it focuses on Planning Commission approval of plans in that way. So we have brought to you several minor site plans that needed that kind of action. And what we'd like to do is simply to add the ability for Peter, for minor site plans, to have that authority to use the same section and apply it to smaller projects that come in for minor site plan approval. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions that you may have. The next step would be a public hearing. So if you're comfortable with the amendment, I invite you to consider authorizing a public hearing. And as I said, I'm happy to answer questions about what we propose.
In terms of process, how does this improve or change the overall workflow within the administrative function?
Well, I think the key is really the benefit for the applicant, because it concludes the final site plan approval process faster. And it actually, frankly, encourages the developers to simply meet the ordinance. If you follow the ordinance and get approved. That's what we tell people. Here are the requirements. Just follow the ordinance and get approved. This is another opportunity to do that and speed the process up potentially by as much as 3 or 4 weeks. We ask for final site plans to be turned in at least 3 weeks ahead of of this meeting. And keep in mind, we're trying to get our package out a week ahead. So that only gives, internally, we have less than 2 weeks really to review those plans, prepare reports, deal with any details that need to be dealt with. So if we can avoid, if we get to a point where they don't need those 3 or 4 weeks, but instead that plan is good to go, it's found to be in good order, then it should be approved right then with a few days review. And then they can then move on to building permits and construction.
Other questions? Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense because we've had situations where we've gotten materials where it's a preliminary application and yet you look at it and it's got everything in it that you'd want in a completed application virtually. And there's maybe a couple minor tweaks and then it still comes back to us. And we kind of, make our best attempt to make look like we're doing something, and yet it's obvious that it really should have been approved already. So really, this is if we're comfortable with this, we're just setting a date for public hearing.
That's correct.
Okay.
Is this a pretty standard practice?
The state act, the state zoning act. First of all, I'll say that approving a site plan is an administrative action, even when you do it as a planning commission. It is considered an administrative action. That's why somebody that, for example, is aggrieved by a decision you make with regards to a site plan can appeal that to the Zoning Board of Appeals, just like any other administrative action. The state act does not specify who approves site plans. It simply notes the approving individual or approving body needs to do certain things in certain ways. But frankly, the entire site plan process could be administrative if we chose to. I don't recommend it. I think there's value in the having the additional perspectives, and especially that preliminary site plan stage when things can be tweaked to it's a little more malleable. It's very valuable to have that input from the Planning Commission. But as I said, the state act, under the state act, it can be an entirely administrative process, and there are some mostly very large cities, Grand Rapids and Detroit kind of level, that are mostly an administrative process for site plan approvals.
Thank you.
So last month we did make a motion to put the sign portion on, to move that to a public hearing. So I would entertain a motion to put this on as a public hearing in the September meeting if someone wants to do that.
I would move to put this item on our September meeting. Is that going to be adequate?
For a public hearing.
For a public hearing, I'm sorry.
Support?
Okay, so this motion was by Gross and was seconded by Olver to set a public hearing for the text amendment 24-02 at the September Planning Commission meeting. Any further discussion of the motion? Okay, roll call.
Lab,
Yes.
Squadrito,
Yes.
Buckley,
Yes.
Over,
Yes.
Thering,
Yes.
Gross,
Yes.
all yeses.
Okay, very good, thank you. So we've got one more agenda item, and that is under other business. This is the return of the sidewalk and pathway construction policies document. And so there were a few minor, there were a few changes that were made as a result of the discussion last month, I believe. And they are in section E. And I'll let you kind of remind us of where we are on this.
Well, thank you. You have our memo dated August the 12th, and then the updated draft policy resolution also dated August the 12th. And as you said, the discussion at our last meeting was primarily related to the funding priorities, policies in section E of the resolution. The underlines and strike-throughs are based on the previous draft you saw. We had, where we made changes that you saw last month, those are now incorporated into plain text. So where you see underline and strike-through text, that's new for this month. Certainly I hope that we met what you were looking for. We made the changes that were discussed at our last meeting to clarify the language both in the first paragraph and then in the paragraph number 3, and then that minor typo was corrected as well.
Yeah, we discussed this last month, and there was a sense of folks wanting to be able to see it in final, or at least in the updated form. So it is back before us. And this is something that would be recommended to the Board of Trustees for their approval.
The Board of Trustees has looked at and reviewed this as well, or not yet?
No, the next step would be sending it to the Board of Trustees. They did see, I don't recall if it was, I think you saw an initial draft of it.
Because
that
we
shared.
talked a lot about the funding part of it, and I think that's where on page 3, at number 4, was that added?
Yeah, that language on page 3 of our report, page 68 of your packet, that boxed section is a highlight or excerpt from the ordinance as it was ultimately adopted by the Board of Trustees. So that's really where their discussion was a discussion on the ordinance itself, where they added the language about cost-sharing guidance under this policy item. And out of that then actually came subsection E of this proposed policy, which was brought to you last month to take a look at.
I think that was a big part of our discussion.
Yeah, we discussed that fairly thoroughly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I said that was part of the big discussion last week.
Yep.
It was pretty thoroughly discussed, I thought. Put a motion on the floor so we can get it discussed. I'd make a motion to recommend to the Board of Trustees that the proposed sidewalk and pathway construction policy resolution with the revision date of August 12th of 2024 be adopted as presented.
Motion was made by Gross. Is there a second?
Second.
Second is by Olver. Further discussion? If not, we'll have one more roll call, please.
Buckley,
Yes.
Lapp,
Yes.
Thering,
Yes.
Olver,
Yes.
Gross,
Yes.
Squadrito,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay. So thank you for that. So those are our agenda items, but we do have the second public comment now. This is extended public comment, and this is for individuals to address the Planning Commission on any item, whether it's on tonight's agenda or not. Again, give us your name and address for the minutes, and limit your comments to 5 minutes on any issue. Extended public comments open at 8:44.
No one's online.
And we do not have a physical audience, and we don't have anybody online, so we'll go ahead and close extended public comment back until next month. Next is final board comment. Any comments from board members?
Again, my apologies for not having my notes. I just...
We'll just expect a longer report next week.
Yeah,
Yeah, unfortunately, you're gonna have to listen to me.
you've wet our whistle of anticipation.
I hope you're excited.
For next month, yeah. don't think I have anything.
Can I ask a chicken-related question?
Oh, yeah, let's talk about chickens.
Have there been complaints about that property on Isabella Road?
Yeah, it's in the monthly report.
I saw
There's
that,
actually
yeah.
2 properties there.
Okay.
There's 943 is one of the 2 addresses, they're right
Okay.
nearby, that there have been
There have been
complaints. In one case, there have been issues with the animals trespassing on other people's property. You saw the pictures of this one. Mr. Gallinay's been out there and has seen the scene as well. I'm not sure, I can't speak to where the chickens are coming from, but they sure look pretty locked down here. But nonetheless, there are 2 properties that have the chickens have the same issue. They're both in the light industrial district. Our ordinance, by the way, these are non-conforming uses, these homes, because they're in the industrial district. Our ordinance has very strong protection for the home. If a tornado wiped it flat, they could rebuild it, even though it's zoned light industrial. But that protection or that use does not extend as far as to the chickens being allowed in the industrial district. So that's why the rezoning is the necessary step. And we'll, as I said, we'll have a good history memo for you for the next meeting, and we'll see where the conversation goes.
But rezoning would still not address the issue of the complaints from the neighbors.
The rezoning would address the issue in the sense that if the property was in the R1 district, like the one to the north, the R1 district allows customary agricultural operations as a permitted use. It's farming like the ag district in that sense.
But you still can't let your animals run on other people's properties.
It's a husbandry issue.
At that point, though, it's also a private matter. That's not a zoning regulation at that point.
Okay.
We do not regulate whether the farmer's cow gets out and gets onto a neighboring property. That's a dispute between private parties.
If the determination was to rezone, how long does that process take? And in thinking about this family that spoke to us this evening, what is their disciplinary action for not conforming at this point? Just what does that look like?
Well, Peter has, I apologize, I'm kind of speaking for you, but I will say this, that Peter has let them know, and when we met with them the other day, we reiterated it again, that if the process, if there's a rezoning process underway, whether they applied or whether you would take an action to initiate it as a township initiated action, that as long as that process is in place, the ordinance enforcement activity will be simply put in abeyance. We will wait further developments, essentially, because a rezoning is a way to resolve the violation, and so it would be a legitimate process at that point. You heard the applicants tonight. We did share with them that they could apply. They talked about the financial element associated with that, and there is a cost. There's a lot of time involved in dealing with the rezoning application, and that's why the fee is where it was set at, as to deal with that time. The escrow deposit, I think it's $1,000, is what it is because there are multiple notices required. There was only one notice required for that special use permit, which is why the escrow deposit is $500, and they're going to get a fair chunk of that back. I don't know how much, but it costs less than $500 to put their ad in the paper. But for rezoning, there are 3 notices that have to be done. Right? 2, is it 3 or 2? 3. And so most of that $1,000, in fact, usually a little bit more than that $1,000, will get used up for those notices. So there is a cost, unfortunately, but the township can initiate it, and if you initiate it, then obviously we bear the cost. It's simply part of our general fund budget item.
That leads me to an additional question, and that is just in terms of these public notices and newspapers. I have not picked up a hard copy newspaper, and I can't remember when. So I'm just wondering, operationally, organizationally, is that the right place for us to be spending money and having people pay fees to put a notice in a newspaper if newspapers aren't really the right place to reach people? So I'm just curious, has that come up? Has anybody looked at that?
Yeah, that's a question for our state legislature. There have been discussions.
So it's a
There-
state law that requires
Right.
notice in a printed local
Newspaper.
newspaper.
That's a topic that's been, I'm
What,
sorry.
what it says is newspaper of record.
Okay.
There are some newspapers of record that are mostly online, but even in that case, to satisfy the public notice requirements, they do print some editions and they have them available. In very small communities, that's sometimes how you get this done. There have been bills in the past. I don't think there are any current bills to allow for electronic notices. Challenge is, not everybody has a computer, not everybody has a smartphone, but anybody can pick up a newspaper at the library for free and read it.
Sure.
I will say, the Morning Sun, we are very fortunate to have a daily newspaper in our community. And the Morning Sun, they're a great paper. And so I encourage you to pick up a paper because
I've got the online version.
I've got
I
the
see- I
online
see-
version,
I see,
too.
I read it,
Well,
I see
yeah.
the notices.
But actually, the thing with the online, I mean, if you have a subscription, great, because if you have an online subscription, it's really the same paper.
That's what I have.
But the free version actually is just a sliver of what the paper actually has. So I encourage it. It's very rare for a community of our size to have a daily paper. But there's great benefit to it. So I encourage you to pick up a paper and help keep them in business. But for us, we have
Well,
to
the ads
publish it.
probably help.
Yeah, right, at this point, we have to publish it. We don't have to post it on our website. That's not a state law requirement, but we do, because a lot of people find it there.
Sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
two things real quickly. If the chickens and ducks had hard hats, would they be allowed in the industrial district? Just a thought. And then the other thing was, I don't know about those people, but my Instagram feed is like half animals. So when they say this is a great way to keep them away from their cell phones, apparently they haven't decided to make these birds,
They each have
give
their own
them their
account.
own, social media presence. Because once you do that, you're on your phone more than ever.
Got their own TikTok page, the duck.
That runner duck sounds like it has promise.
All right. So unless there's other comments, we have completed our agenda, so we'll stand in adjournment until the third Tuesday in September.
Here, here.